He looked me in the eye and said I trapped him, like the pregnancy was some kind of plan. Like I was playing a game with his life. But what he never asked was how I felt. He didn't ask if I was scared, or if I even wanted this. He just assumed the worst, and built a wall between us overnight. I thought we were partners. I thought love meant facing hard things together. But when it got real, when life didn't follow the plan, he made me the enemy. And for weeks, I held it in until I couldn't anymore. I said something I knew would hit him hard, but I wasn't sorry. Because sometimes the truth is the only thing that breaks through the silence. This isn't just a story about pregnancy. It's about fear, blame, heartbreak, and two people who had to lose their illusions to finally see each other. What happened next changed everything. I never thought the word trap would come out of his mouth, especially not directed at me, especially not after everything we'd been through together. We were sitting in the living room. It was quiet to quiet, the kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for something to explode. I had just told him I was pregnant, not in some dramatic way. No Instagram reveal, no balloons, no big smiles, just raw honesty. A quiet moment between two people who had built a life together. I said, I took a test, twice. I'm pregnant. He stared at me for a few seconds, like the words were still floating in the air, waiting to land. And then he said it, calm, cold, like it was a fact, not a feeling. You trapped me. I blinked at first. I thought I misheard him, that he was joking in some twisted way. So I laughed just a little nervously and said, what? And he repeated it. You trapped me. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. This was the man I had built my future around. The man who always said he wanted something real. The one who told me, over and over, you're different. You're the one. And now he was looking at me like I was the enemy. I said, trapped you? Are you serious right now? He just leaned back and folded his arms like he was preparing for a fight. Like I was about to pull off some mask and reveal that I'd been planning this all along. I'm almost 40, he said. You think I don't know how this looks? You get pregnant without us planning it, and suddenly everything changes. I'm not stupid. I couldn't believe it. I genuinely couldn't wrap my head around how quickly the man I loved had turned into someone who saw me as a threat. So I asked him, straight up, do you really think I planned this? That I wanted to get pregnant just to lock you in? He didn't answer, and that silence said more than any words ever could. In his mind, the math added up. I was younger. He was established. He thought I looked at him like some kind of ticket, like I was playing a long game and this pregnancy was just my final move. And the worst part, he thought I was desperate enough to do it. I sat there, trying to stay calm, trying to breathe. But inside, I was unraveling, because I wasn't ready for this either. I was scared too. I had plans, dreams. I hadn't even figured out how I felt about becoming a mom yet. But none of that mattered to him. All he saw was betrayal. I said, you think this is something I wanted? You think this is some trap? I haven't even had time to process it. I thought you'd be scared. Yeah, but I thought you'd be scared with me, not of me. He looked away, said nothing, just stared out the window like I was no longer in the room. And in that moment, I felt something break. Not because he didn't want the baby, not even because he was afraid. I could have handled fear. I could have handled confusion. But what I couldn't handle was being accused of manipulating the one person I trusted most. I'd always known there was an age gap. It never bothered me. If anything, I admired how grounded and mature he was. But now, that same gap felt like a canyon, like I was on one side, trying to hold his hand, and he was already walking away. I remember thinking, is this who he really is? Or is this just who he becomes under pressure? I didn't have the answer, but I knew one thing: I wasn't going to beg him to see me clearly. If he truly believed I was capable of something so cold, then maybe he never really saw me at all. And yeah, I was hurt, deeply, but I was also angry. Because love shouldn't turn into suspicion the second life throws something unexpected at you. We were supposed to face things together. Instead, he looked me in the eye and made me feel like a stranger, And just like that, everything changed. It's crazy how people assume that just because you're the one who got pregnant, you must have wanted it more. Like the burden automatically means it was your decision. Like your body made the choice for both of you. But no one asked what I wanted. Not even him. He didn't ask if I was scared, or overwhelmed, or confused. He didn't ask how I felt waking up the morning I saw those two pink lines. He just saw the result and assumed motive. And the thing is, I wasn't ready either. I was terrified. I'd stared at that pregnancy test in the bathroom for over 10 minutes, thinking it had to be wrong. That maybe I'd read it too fast or misinterpreted the lines. So I took another, then another. I wasn't excited, I was panicked. I wasn't thinking of baby names or onesies or nursery colors. I was thinking about everything I was about to lose. My career, my freedom, my identity. I didn't even tell my best friend right away. I didn't text anyone. I just sat on the floor of my bathroom, knees pulled to my chest, wondering how the hell I was going to explain this to the man I thought I'd spend my life with. But when I finally did, when I sat across from him and told him, with trembling hands and a knot in my stomach, the first thing he saw was a scheme. A trap, like I had been planning it, like I'd calculated it, circled a date on a calendar, and smiled while my whole future hung in the balance. It broke something in me, because we used to talk about having a family, not in a scheduled, perfectly timed way, but in that dreamy, someday kind of way. Late night pillow talk, after wine, when the world felt soft and far away. We'd lie there and say things like, when we have a kid, or if we ever become parents. But I guess those were just words. His version of a fantasy he didn't actually want to live. He didn't say, how are you feeling? Or are you okay? Or what do you need from me right now? Instead, he questioned my character, my intentions, as if love wasn't even part of the equation anymore. And here's what hit me the hardest: he made me feel ashamed of something I didn't even choose, because I didn't plan this. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't skip pills or play games or trick him. I took my birth control. We were responsible. But nothing is 100%. Life still happens. Accidents still happen. But instead of seeing me as someone with him, going through something with him, he saw me as someone against him. And he didn't even stop to ask. He didn't ask how long I'd known. He didn't ask how I felt about keeping the baby. He didn't ask if I was ready to be a mom. And the truth is, I didn't know the answer to that yet. I was still figuring it out. But he didn't give me the space to figure anything out. He just jumped straight to blame. That night, I stayed in the guest room. We barely spoke. And in the darkness, I just stared at the ceiling, wondering how everything had shifted so fast. Wondering how someone who used to kiss my forehead and tell me I was his world could now look at me like a stranger in his house. I replayed every moment of our relationship in my head. The good, the bad, the quiet nights, the arguments. And I kept thinking, was this always there, buried beneath the surface? That fear? That suspicion? That unwillingness to really see me? Or did the idea of fatherhood just scare him so badly he had to push it onto someone else? I don't know. But what I do know is that I never got the chance to say my truth. That I wasn't ready either. That I was just as overwhelmed, just as unsure. That I needed support, not suspicion. Love, not distance. And the saddest part, I would have told him all of that if he had just asked. After that night, things between us shifted completely. We weren't talking, not really. Just surface level stuff. Like two people coexisting under the same roof, going through the motions, but avoiding the real conversation we both knew was waiting. I spent a lot of time alone, thinking, wondering how everything unraveled so fast. 1 second, I was scared and vulnerable, telling the man I loved that I might be carrying his child. And the next, I was defending myself like I was on trial for something I never even did. The silence between us started to eat away at me. He still didn't ask how I felt. He didn't check in, didn't offer comfort or connection. It was like he was just waiting for what? I didn't know. Maybe for me to admit guilt I didn't have. Or maybe just to see if the problem would go away on its own. And in a weird way, I started second-guessing myself. Like, Had I missed something? Did I do something wrong without realizing it? Was there a moment where I failed to communicate something clearly? That's how deeply his reaction cut me. It didn't just hurt, it made me question my own truth. So when I went to the clinic to confirm everything, I did it alone. I didn't tell him I had the appointment. I just got in my car, drove across town, and sat in that waiting room with my hands clenched so tight they ached. I stared at the floor, the walls, the posters about prenatal care. Everyone around me looked like they were glowing, hopeful. I felt like I was holding in a scream. When the nurse called me back, I followed her quietly. We did the blood work, the urine test, and then the wait. The long, heavy silence in a cold room with nothing but my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. Finally, the doctor walked in. She smiled gently, sat down, and said the words I already knew but still wasn't ready to hear. "You are pregnant." I nodded, barely, but then she paused, flipping through the chart again, and what she said next caught me completely off guard. "There's something else," she said. "Your hormone levels. They're lower than we'd expect at this stage. It's possible this pregnancy isn't viable. We'll need to monitor things closely, but I just want you to be prepared." Like I hadn't already been drowning in uncertainty, she scheduled me for a follow-up in a week. Told me to rest, try not to stress, and to avoid jumping to conclusions. But how do you not stress when the future you didn't plan for is now balancing on a thread? When I got back home, he was on the couch, same place he'd been for days. He looked up when I walked in, like he wanted to say something but didn't. I stood in the doorway for a second and then said, "I went to the doctor today." He blinked. "You did?" "Yeah, I didn't tell you because, honestly, I didn't think you wanted to come." He didn't argue. I kept going. "I'm pregnant, but there might be complications. It might not. I don't know. It's too early to tell." He sat up straighter. For the first time in days, his expression changed. It wasn't relief. It wasn't fear. It was something messier, conflicted. Then he said, "So you don't know if you're keeping it?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and then I said, "I don't know if it's staying. The choice might not be mine." That's when the truth started to hit him. The reality that none of this was some plan I cooked up. That maybe, just maybe, I was telling the truth all along. He leaned forward and said quietly, "Why didn't you tell me you had the appointment?" And I said, "Because you didn't ask. You didn't want to be part of this. You made that clear." We sat in silence again, but this time, it was different. Not angry, not cold, just real. After a while he said, "I panicked. I don't know what I thought. I just didn't expect it." And I told him, "Neither did I, but I didn't turn on you." I think that's when the first crack in his wall appeared. The first sign that maybe he was beginning to understand the damage he'd done by reacting the way he did. The test results gave me more than just an answer about the pregnancy. They gave me a mirror. And when I looked into it, I saw a woman who had been forced to carry the weight of someone else's fear, without ever being given the space to share her own. There's a point where silence starts to feel like surrender, like you're just letting someone rewrite the truth while you sit there and nod. I had been quiet for too long, holding back, giving him time, making space, trying to be the understanding one, the calm one, the reasonable one. But I was done being quiet. It was a few days after the doctor's appointment. We still hadn't followed up. Still no new answers. I was caught in this emotional limbo, waiting to know if I was about to become a mother or lose something I hadn't even had the chance to want yet. And he was still distant. Not cruel, not angry, just absent. Like he was physically here, but emotionally checked out. And then it happened. We were in the kitchen. I don't even remember what we were talking about. It started with something small, something stupid. I asked if he could pick up groceries. He said he was busy. I said it would only take 10 minutes. He said, "You know I have a lot going on right now. I don't need this." And that word "this," it hit me. I wasn't asking much. I wasn't yelling or demanding. I was just asking for help, for a small gesture that made me feel like we were still on the same side. So I said, "You don't need this." "What does that mean exactly?" He looked up, caught off guard. "It means I don't need another layer of stress right now. I just stared at him. And then, before I even realized I was going to say it, the words came out of my mouth. If you weren't so old, we'd have time to wait. The air shifted instantly. He froze. His jaw clenched. What did you just say? And I didn't take it back. I didn't soften it or explain it away. I just looked at him and said, "You're scared, right? Of being a dad. Of starting over at your age. Of the fact that your friends have teenagers and you might have a newborn. But instead of owning that fear, you blamed me. You made me the villain because that's easier than looking in the mirror and admitting you're the one who's not ready." He opened his mouth to speak, but I wasn't done. "You think I planned this? You think I'm some girl who tricked you into staying? I didn't trap you. Life happened, and instead of showing up with me, you ran from it like a coward." He stepped back, like the words had hit him harder than he expected. But I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't trying to hurt him. I was just done pretending, done protecting his ego at the expense of my own truth. "You wanted someone younger," I said. "You loved how I made you feel. Energetic, desired, like you still had time. And now you're angry that reality showed up and reminded you that time doesn't stop for anyone." He didn't say a word. I could see it in his eyes, the shame, the guilt, the defensiveness all colliding at once. He was unraveling in front of me, and for once, I didn't rush to hold him together, because I was falling apart too. I had spent weeks walking on eggshells, questioning myself, wondering if I had accidentally destroyed the relationship I loved. But now I saw it clearly. I didn't break us. I just stopped carrying the weight alone. That night, we didn't talk anymore. He slept in the other room. I lay in bed, wide awake, not because I was angry anymore, but because I finally felt like I'd told the truth. The kind of truth no one wants to say out loud, the messy, ugly kind that pulls back every layer of politeness and lays it bare. I don't regret what I said, because sometimes the only way to make someone hear you is to say the one thing they've been avoiding the most. He needed to hear it. And I needed to say it. Not out of bitterness, but because silence was no longer an option. The next morning was quiet. Not the kind of cold, bitter silence we'd been sitting in for weeks, but a different kind. Like the tension had drained out, leaving behind something heavier. But strangely honest, he came into the kitchen while I was making coffee. For the first time in what felt like forever, he didn't look guarded. He looked tired and human. He sat down at the table without saying anything. I poured 2 mugs, slid one in front of him, and for a minute, we just sat there, sipping quietly like people who used to know how to be close. Then he said, "You were right." Just like that. No build-up, no defense. Just those 3 words. I didn't say anything right away. I didn't need to. I just looked at him, waiting to see if he meant it. He stared at the floor and said, "I was scared. Not just of the baby, of everything. The future, getting older, messing things up." I told myself I was being logical, that I just wanted to protect myself. But really, I didn't want to admit I felt completely out of control. I nodded slowly. "I know." He looked up at me. "When you said what you said, it hurt. But not because it was cruel. Because it was true. I've been hiding behind fear and calling it maturity. Blaming you because it's easier than blaming myself." It felt strange, hearing him finally say what I'd been screaming in my head for weeks. I said, "You made me feel like I was the one who did something wrong. Like I had some secret plan to trap you. And all I really wanted was for you to look at me and say, 'We'll figure this out together.'" He let out a breath and said, "I should have said that. I still want to say that." We sat there for a long time, not fixing everything, not wrapping it all up with some perfect answer, just sitting in the truth. And for once, the truth didn't feel like a threat. It felt like something we could finally hold together. Later that day, we went to the follow-up appointment. This time, he came with me. He held my hand in the waiting room, and when the nurse called my name, he stood up like it wasn't even a question. We found out the pregnancy wasn't viable. It was early, and my body had already begun the process of letting go. No procedure was needed, just rest. time, grief. We sat in the car afterward, neither of us speaking. The kind of silence that comes from shared sadness. He reached for my hand and held it so gently, like he wasn't sure if he deserved to anymore. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't just about the pregnancy. This was about everything we hadn't said for years. All the ways we'd avoided the hard conversations. All the ways we'd covered fear with charm, disappointment with silence, love with performance. We didn't break up, but we did break open. And maybe that's what we needed more than anything. To finally stop pretending. To stop trying to be the perfect couple with the perfect timeline and the perfect understanding of the future, and just be two people flawed, scared, honest, trying to love each other in real time. We talked more in the next 2 weeks than we had in the last 2 years, not just about the baby, but about us, our fears, our pasts, where we saw this going, what we needed, what we were willing to work on. There were tears, there was anger, but there was also softness, laughter, the kind that only comes when the armor finally falls away. We're still together, still figuring it out. But now, it feels real, not polished, not perfect, just real. He's no longer afraid to tell me when he feels old or unsure, or like life is slipping faster than he expected. And I'm no longer afraid to say what I need, or to tell him when something he does hurts, even if it's unintentional. We didn't get the ending we thought we would, but we found something else, something quieter, more honest, and in a strange way, more lasting. Not every story ends with a baby. Sometimes it ends with two people finally learning how to see each other and deciding to stay.